The military hospital buzzed with chaos. Orders were shouted, boots echoed down the hallways. In the middle of it all stood a young nurse, barely 30, calm eyes, steady hands. Behind her, a colonel grumbled, "Who assigned a rookie to ICU Bravo?" Another doctor whispered, "She's too young for this." She didn't respond. She only leaned over the wounded soldier whose pulse was fading fast. Moments later, a helicopter landed outside. Everyone turned. A 4-star general stepped through the doors. He scanned the room. When he saw her, he froze. Then he saluted. The entire room fell silent, and every whisper of doubt died right there. Lieutenant Jasmine Williams, 28 years old, registered combat nurse, assigned to Brooke Army Medical Center in San Antonio, Texas. Her black hair was pulled back in a tight bun. Her brown skin glowed under the fluorescent lights. Her face looked young, so young that most people assumed she was just an intern, but they didn't know her story. Jasmine had served 2 years on the battlefield in Afghanistan as a tactical field medic. She had saved lives under gunfire. She had performed emergency surgeries in the back of moving trucks. She had held dying soldiers in her arms and refused to let them go. Her personal file was classified. Special operations, the kind of missions no one talks about. Now she was back in America, working in the ICU of a military hospital where most of the doctors were older, set in their ways, and deeply skeptical of young staff members. On her first day taking charge of a shift, the attending physician, Dr. Martinez, looked at her. His expression was cold. "This ward is for real soldiers, Lieutenant, not classroom heroes." Jasmine replied calmly, "Yes, sir. Then I'll make sure they stay alive long enough to thank you." A few nurses nearby exchanged glances. One of them, the head nurse, Patricia, whispered to Jasmine later, "Don't take it personally, dear. They used to say the same thing to me 20 years ago." Jasmine smiled softly. "I'm used to it." During her first shift, a critical case came in, a sergeant with severe internal bleeding. The room erupted into controlled chaos. Jasmine moved fast. She applied a hemostatic clamp with precision. Her hands didn't shake. Her timing was perfect, down to the second. The bleeding stopped. The entire room went quiet. Dr. Martinez stared at her. "Where did you learn that?" Jasmine answered simply, "Field hospitals don't come with second chances." He said nothing, but his expression shifted just slightly. Over the next few weeks, Jasmine proved herself again and again. She handled trauma cases that made senior nurses flinch. She worked 16-hour shifts without complaint. She remembered every patient's name, every allergy, every fear. One particular night, a young Marine came in, 22 years old, shrapnel wounds from an explosion. He was terrified, shaking uncontrollably. The other nurses struggled to calm him down. His heart rate was spiking, blood pressure rising dangerously. Jasmine approached his bedside. She spoke softly. "Marine, look at me." He turned his head, eyes wild with fear. "What's your name?" she asked. "To Thompson," he stammered. "Thompson, I need you to breathe with me. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Can you do that?" He nodded, tried to follow her rhythm. Jasmine placed her hand on his shoulder. Steady pressure, grounding him. "I've been where you are," she said quietly. "I know what you saw out there. I know what it feels like when the world explodes around you." Thompson's breathing slowed. His eyes locked onto hers. "But you're here now. You're safe. You're home. And I'm not going anywhere until you're stable." Within minutes, his vitals normalized. The panic subsided. Later, one of the younger nurses asked Jasmine, "How did you do that? How did you know what to say?" Jasmine didn't answer right away. She just looked toward the window, toward the darkness outside. "Because I've been in the back of that helicopter," she finally said, "and I remember the voice that kept me calm." But the whispers didn't stop. "She's too confident. She acts like she's seen war. She's just a kid." Jasmine heard them, but she never responded. Patricia told her once, during a quiet moment in the break room, "You know what your problem is? You make it look easy, and people hate that. Jasmine laughed. I don't make it look easy. I just don't have time to make it look hard. One evening, after a particularly brutal 12-hour shift, Jasmine sat alone in the staff lounge. She opened her wallet. Inside was an old photograph. It showed her in desert combat fatigues, dust and smoke in the background. She was kneeling, holding a wounded soldier in her arms. Behind her was a Black Hawk helicopter with the marking Echo 23. She stared at the photo for a long moment. Then she closed the wallet, took a deep breath, and went back to work. In her locker, Jasmine kept a worn dog tag, not hers. It belonged to Specialist Marcus Thompson, KIA. She had tried to save him and failed. She carried that weight every single day. It was a hot summer evening when the call came in. Emergency inbound, multiple casualties, soldiers returning from a combat zone in the Middle East, IED explosion, critical injuries. Jasmine was on night duty. She was the first to receive them. The ambulance doors flew open, stretchers rolled in, blood everywhere. A young sergeant was gasping for air, his uniform soaked in red. Jasmine shouted, "Crash cart here, stat!" Dr. Martinez rushed in. He saw Jasmine in charge. His face tightened. "Where's the senior staff? Why is the rookie running this?" Jasmine didn't look up. "Because everyone else is stuck in surgery." Martinez shook his head. "Then stand back. I'll handle this." But Jasmine was already working. She checked the sergeant's vitals. Pulse weak. Blood pressure dropping fast. She saw it. The telltale twitch in his carotid artery. A sign of imminent cardiac arrest. "He's crashing, sir. We need epinephrine now." Martinez frowned. "We wait for lab confirmation." Jasmine's voice turned sharp. "He won't have time for lab results." "That's an order, Lieutenant." The room held its breath. Two other nurses looked between them, uncertain who to follow. Jasmine stared at the monitor. The heart rate was dropping. 60 beats per minute. 55. 50. She had seen this before, in the desert, in the back of a damaged Humvee, when waiting meant death. She looked at the sergeant's face. He couldn't have been older than 23. Someone's son, maybe someone's husband. She thought of Specialist Thompson, the soldier she couldn't save, the one whose dog tag still sat in her locker. Not again. Jasmine made her decision. She grabbed the epinephrine syringe, injected it directly into the sergeant's chest. Then she started compressions. "What are you doing?" Martinez shouted. Jasmine didn't answer. She counted under her breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Beep. The monitor flickered. Beep, beep, beep. The sergeant's pulse stabilized. The room exhaled. Martinez stared at her, his face a mix of anger and disbelief. "You just violated the chain of command." Jasmine straightened up. Her voice was steady. "Sir, I followed the chain that keeps hearts beating." Martinez stepped closer. His voice dropped to a harsh whisper. "You could be court-martialed for this." Jasmine met his eyes, unflinching. "Then court-martial me. But he's alive." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Martinez turned sharply, walked out without another word. The other medical staff stood frozen, unsure what had just happened. One of the junior nurses whispered to her colleague, "Did she just disobey a direct order?" "She saved his life," another replied quietly. Jasmine ignored them all. She checked the sergeant's IV line, monitored his oxygen levels, made sure every number was stable. 30 minutes later, the sergeant opened his eyes, confused, disoriented, but alive. "Where am I?" he mumbled. Jasmine leaned over him, smiled gently. "You're at Brooke Army Medical Center. You're safe now." He blinked, tried to focus on her face. Did I make it?" "You made it," she said softly. "You're going home." Tears formed in the corner of his eyes. "Thank you." Jasmine squeezed his hand. "Thank your unit. They got you here." But she knew the truth. If she'd waited even 30 seconds longer, he wouldn't have survived. The other nurses looked away, some in admiration, some in fear. Martinez said nothing. He turned and walked out. The rest of the shift was tense. Whispers spread through the hospital. She's reckless. Too confident for her age. She thinks she knows better than the doctors. Patricia found Jasmine in the supply room later that night. She placed a hand on her shoulder. Courage is often mistaken for arrogance until someone survives. Jasmine smiled, weakly. I didn't do it to prove a point. I know, Patricia said. That's why it matters. Before leaving her shift, Jasmine stopped by the ICU. The sergeant was sleeping, stable. She adjusted his blanket, checked his IV line. Then she leaned down and whispered, "You'll see your unit again. I promised one of you before." She didn't explain. She didn't need to. As she walked through the empty hallway, her boots echoed softly. She thought about the faces she had saved and the ones she couldn't. She thought about Echo 23, the mission that changed her, the day she became more than just a nurse. She pulled out her phone, scrolled to a saved message. It was from General Washington, sent 3 years ago. "Williams, you saved my men. I will never forget." She had never replied. What do you say to that? That night, Jasmine wrote in her journal, one line. Some people think saving a life is about skill. It's not. It's about refusing to let go. The next morning, the hospital was buzzing. "General Washington is coming. He's inspecting the trauma unit. Everyone needs to be ready." General Robert Washington, 4-star general, a legend in the special operations community. He had commanded missions that most people would never hear about, including Operation Echo 23 back in 2015. The same mission Jasmine had been part of. Doctors rushed to prepare reports. Nurses cleaned and re-cleaned every surface. Everyone wanted to impress the general. Dr. Martinez gathered the staff. "Listen up. When the general arrives, you stand at attention. You speak only when spoken to. Understood?" Everyone nodded. He glanced at Jasmine. "Try not to speak unless necessary, Lieutenant. Let the experienced staff handle the general." Jasmine simply smiled. "Understood, sir." An hour later, the convoy arrived. Black SUVs pulled up to the front entrance. Security personnel swept the area. Then the general stepped out. He was tall, dark-skinned, gray hair at the temples, sharp eyes. His uniform was immaculate, rows of medals across his chest. He walked through the main entrance with his aides and a few reporters trailing behind. The staff lined up in the hallway. Jasmine stood near the end of the line, quiet, composed. General Washington greeted each person, shook hands, asked questions. His voice was firm but kind. He moved down the line, getting closer to Jasmine. When he reached Dr. Martinez, he paused. "Doctor, thank you for your service here." "It's an honor, sir," Martinez replied. Then the general took one more step. His eyes landed on Jasmine. He stopped. His expression changed. Recognition, disbelief, emotion. "Lieutenant Williams." The entire room went silent. Jasmine stood at attention. "Yes, sir." The general stepped closer. His voice dropped. "You were with Echo 23. Martinez's eyes widened. "Wait, you served under the general?" General Washington turned to face the room. His voice grew louder, strong, clear. "She didn't serve under me. We serve because of her." Every person in that hallway froze. The general continued. 3 years ago, our unit was ambushed in Afghanistan. 2 of our medics were killed in the first 30 seconds. We had 4 men down, bleeding out. No air support, no medevac. He looked directly at Jasmine. "This lieutenant right here. She stayed behind under active fire. She performed field surgery with nothing but a flashlight and a first aid kit. She kept 3 men alive for 40 minutes until extraction arrived." The room was dead silent. She was 25 years old and she refused to leave anyone behind. One of the reporters raised a camera. The flash went off. General Washington turned back to Jasmine. He stood at attention and he saluted her. Jasmine's breath caught. She saluted back, her eyes glistening. Then, one by one, every officer and nurse in the hallway saluted. Dr. Martinez stood stiff. He slowly raised his hand, saluted, his face filled with shame and respect. Jasmine held her composure, barely. The general lowered his salute, but he didn't move away. Instead, he spoke louder so everyone could hear. "Do you want to know what kind of person Lieutenant Williams is?" His voice echoed through the corridor. Everyone leaned in. When the extraction bird finally arrived, she'd lost so much blood from shrapnel wounds that she could barely stand. The pilot ordered her onto the helicopter first, medical emergency. He paused. His jaw tightened. She refused. She said, and I quote, "Not until every wounded man is loaded first." Gasps rippled through the crowd. She passed out on the tarmac. We had to carry her onto the bird. She woke up 3 days later in a field hospital, and the first thing she asked was, "Did they all make it?" The general's voice cracked slightly. "2 of those men were my son's best friends. One of them was my godson. They're alive today because a 25-year-old nurse valued their lives more than her own." Silence blanketed the room. One of the reporters stepped forward. "General Washington, what would you say to those who doubt young medical professionals?" The general didn't hesitate. "I'd say this. Age tells you how long someone has lived, but courage tells you how deeply they've lived." He turned back to Jasmine. "This woman has more battlefield experience than most surgeons twice her age. She earned her place here. And if anyone still doubts that, they can answer to me." The room erupted in spontaneous applause. Jasmine felt her knees weaken, but she stood firm. After the salute, the general stepped forward. He spoke quietly, just for her. "I never got to thank you properly. Those men have families because of you. I have a son because of you." Jasmine's voice cracked. "You don't need to thank me, sir. I was just doing my job." "No," he said firmly. "You did more than your job. You did what heroes do." He reached into his pocket, pulled out something small, placed it in her hand. It was a challenge coin, the special operations insignia, reserved only for the most elite warriors. "You've earned this 1,000 times over." Jasmine stared at the coin, her throat tight. "Sir, Keep it," he interrupted, "and know that every man from Echo 23 carries one just like it. You're one of us, always." The reporters captured everything: photos, video, quotes. One journalist approached Jasmine afterward. "Lieutenant Williams, how does it feel to be recognized like this?" Jasmine thought carefully, then answered, "It feels like I'm representing every young medic who's been doubted, every nurse who's been called too inexperienced. This isn't just about me, it's about all of us." The journalist scribbled notes. "What would you say to young people entering military medicine?" Jasmine looked directly at the camera. "I'd say your age doesn't determine your worth. Your actions do. Show up. Do the work. Save the life in front of you. The respect will follow." By that evening, the story went viral. Headlines everywhere. 4-star general salutes young nurse who saved his men. The rookie who wasn't a rookie. Hero in scrubs. Jasmine's photo was shared thousands of times. The image of General Washington saluting her became iconic. Back in the hospital, the mood had completely shifted. Dr. Martinez found Jasmine in her office later that day. He knocked softly. "Lieutenant, may I come in?" Jasmine looked up. "Of course, sir." He sat down. He looked older now, tired, humble. "I owe you an apology." Jasmine shook her head. "You don't." "Yes, I do." He sighed. "I judged you. I doubted you, and I was wrong." Jasmine met his eyes. "You didn't misjudge me, sir. You just hadn't seen the battlefield I came from." Martinez nodded slowly. "I won't make that mistake again." They sat in silence for a moment. Then he stood, extended his hand. Jasmine shook it. "Thank you, Lieutenant, for reminding me what courage looks like." After he left, Jasmine sat alone. She looked at the photo on her desk, Echo 23, the soldiers she saved, the ones she couldn't. She whispered to herself, "This is for you." 1 week later, Jasmine was promoted, head combat nurse, ICU Bravo. The announcement was made during a staff meeting. Everyone clapped, some genuinely, some still processing. Dr. Martinez himself came to her new office. He brought 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might need this," he said with a small smile. Jasmine accepted it. "Thank you, sir." He sat down. "I've been thinking a lot this week about judgment, about assumptions. I realize now that I almost cost a man his life because I didn't trust you." Jasmine sipped her coffee. "You did what you thought was right." "But I was wrong," he said. "And I want to make sure the next young nurse who walks through those doors doesn't face what you did." Jasmine smiled. "Then teach them what you've learned. That's how we honor the lesson." Martinez nodded. "I will." Over the next few days, the hospital transformed. A large black and white photo was framed and hung in the main hallway. It showed General Washington saluting Jasmine. Beneath it, a simple inscription: "Age doesn't define service. Heart does." Young nurses and medics stopped to look at it. Some took photos. Others stood in silence, inspired. Jasmine noticed the change immediately. Young staff members walked with more confidence. They asked more questions. They stopped apologizing for their age. One morning, Jasmine was conducting a training session for new nurses, teaching them how to handle trauma cases. A young recruit raised her hand. "Lieutenant, what do you do when a senior doctor disagrees with your assessment?" Jasmine paused, thought carefully. "You present your evidence. You speak with respect. But you never back down from what you know is right." Another recruit asked, "What if they still don't listen?" Jasmine smiled slightly. "Then you document everything, you follow protocol, and you remember that your first duty is to the patient, not to ego, not to rank, to the patient." The room nodded in understanding. "But here's the most important thing," Jasmine continued. "When you're proven right, don't gloat. When you're proven wrong, admit it. Either way, you learn, and you become better." After the session, several nurses stayed behind. They wanted to talk, to ask questions, to share their own stories of being doubted. Jasmine listened to each one. She remembered what it felt like, the isolation, the frustration, the constant need to prove yourself. "You're not alone," she told them, "and you're not too young. You're exactly where you need to be." Patricia, the head nurse, found Jasmine one afternoon. "You've become a symbol here, you know." Jasmine laughed softly. "I'm just trying to do my job." "You're doing more than that," Patricia said. "You're showing people what's possible." Later that week, the hospital administrator called Jasmine into his office. She wondered if she was in trouble. Instead, he offered her a position: Director of Combat Nurse Training, creating a new program to mentor young military medical professionals. "We need someone who understands what they're going through," he said. "Someone who's been there." Jasmine accepted without hesitation. One evening, a young female recruit approached Jasmine in the cafeteria. She looked nervous. "Lieutenant Williams?" Jasmine turned. "Yes?" The recruit hesitated. I wanted to thank you. I almost quit last month. I thought I wasn't cut out for this. But then I saw your story, and I realized it's not about being perfect. It's about not giving up." Jasmine's heart swelled. She placed a hand on the recruit's shoulder. "You belong here. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." The recruit smiled, tears in her eyes. "Thank you, ma'am." As Jasmine walked through the hospital now, things were different. People nodded with respect. Doctors asked for her input. Younger. Staff looked up to her. But Jasmine remained the same, humble, focused, committed. One night, she received a text from General Washington. "Heard about your promotion. Well deserved. The men you saved are doing well. 2 of them got married. One just had a daughter. They named her Jasmine." She stared at the message. Her throat tightened. She typed back, "That's the greatest honor I could ever receive. Thank you, sir." She set the phone down, looked around her small office, at the diploma on the wall, the photo of Echo 23, the folded flag from a soldier she couldn't save. This was her life, her calling, and she wouldn't trade it for anything. 1 year later, Jasmine stood backstage at the Army Medical Academy graduation ceremony. She wore her dress uniform, the Silver Star Medal on her chest, the one General Washington had personally awarded her 6 months ago. She was the keynote speaker. Her hands were steady, but her heart was racing. The dean introduced her. "Please welcome Lieutenant Jasmine Williams, combat nurse, Silver Star recipient, and a hero to all of us." The auditorium erupted in applause. Jasmine walked onto the stage. Hundreds of young faces looked up at her. Future medics, future nurses, future heroes. She stood at the podium, took a breath, and began. "They called me too young, too new, too untested. Maybe they were right." She paused, "But I was never too afraid." The room was silent. You're going to walk into rooms where no one believes in you, where people doubt your skills, your experience, your right to be there. She looked across the crowd. When that happens, don't argue. Don't defend. Just do the work. Save the life. Prove them wrong with your actions, not your words. A few cadets nodded. "And someday," Jasmine continued, "even generals will salute." The applause started slow, then grew, then thundered through the hall. After the ceremony, General Washington found her outside. "Still saving lives, Lieutenant?" Jasmine smiled. "Always, sir." He handed her something, a folded piece of paper. She opened it. It was a handwritten letter from the 3 soldiers she had saved during Echo 23. All of them had signed it. "We wanted you to know. We're alive because you didn't quit. Thank you." Jasmine's eyes blurred. She folded the letter carefully, held it close. "Thank you, sir, for giving me the chance to serve." Washington shook his head. "No, Lieutenant, thank you for reminding us all what service really means." They shook hands. Then he saluted her one more time. Jasmine walked across the academy grounds. The sun was setting, golden light spilling across the white stone monument at the center of the courtyard. Engraved on it were the words, "Courage has no age." She stood before it, thinking of all the lives she had touched, all the soldiers she had saved, and the one she still carried with her. A young cadet approached her, nervous, hopeful. "Ma'am, can I ask you something?" Jasmine turned. "Of course." "How do you keep going when it gets hard?" Jasmine thought for a moment. Then she smiled. "You remember why you started, and you never let go of the people who need you." The cadet nodded. "Thank you, ma'am." As Jasmine walked away, the sound of a helicopter echoed in the distance. A medical evacuation chopper heading out to save lives. She looked up, watched it disappear into the sky. The blades cut through the air with that familiar rhythm, the sound that had defined so much of her life. She thought of all the flights she'd taken, all the soldiers she'd held, all the promises she had made. Some she kept, some she couldn't, but she never stopped trying. A group of cadets jogged past her, young, eager, ready to serve. One of them called out, "Evening, ma'am." Jasmine smiled. Evening. She watched them go, the next generation, the ones who would carry the torch forward, and she whispered, "I'm still with you." The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Jasmine stood there a moment longer, then turned back toward the building. There was always more work to do, more lives to save, more young medics to mentor, and she wouldn't have it any other way. If you believe silent heroes deserve to be remembered, share this story. If you respect those who fight to save lives, not for recognition, but because it's right, leave a comment below. And if this story inspired you, subscribe for more real stories of courage, sacrifice, and the unsung heroes who serve among us.